Today we are going to discuss the Terror of Tehook, a serial killer in Tehook, Arizona. Hedo Rodriguez was a Tehook native who went to Tehook High School and was a relatively well-mannered student who made good grades. Although many students and teachers alike said he had a fixation on serial killers and kidnappings. Nowadays, this may not seem as odd since true horror has been popularized recently. Hell, even I'm a true horror YouTuber. However, this was back in 2010 when these topics were nowhere near the popularity it was at today. Of the several serial killers, Hedok took interest in Barsun Simbolo, who was another killer inside of Tehook many years before, infamous for finding women alone and strangling them and leaving their corpses limbless and headless in the middle of suburban roadways. And so, Hedok took interest in him, even as far as to going into old newspapers and the library records to read about him. His mother would say his interest became more like an obsession. Years later, Hedok did not go into college, instead moving into a cheap apartment and working in the local movie theater. This is where he would find his first victim. He became enthralled in a woman named Hana Kenji. His journal would later reveal he fantasized about watching the light leaving her eyes and strangling her similarly to Barson. And so, he followed her home one day when he went to watch another movie and eventually memorized her work schedule. This was another thing written in his journal.
So, Hedo
Rodriguez followed her one day after her job and caught her on her way to her vehicle, where he encountered her and began strangling her to death. After realizing what he had done in a panic, he then put her body in a car and put a brick on the gas pedal. This resulted in the vehicle driving into a late-night bus full of passengers, causing a massive car crash. The investigations of the car crash did not reveal that Hedo Rodriguez was the culprit. Months later, after getting a taste of his first kill, Hedo began looking for a new victim, and in this he saw Laura Ordena, a mother of 3 kids who lived in his neighborhood. After repeating the same process he did with Hana, as revealed by his notebook, he set another date in which he would go in for the kill. Following her after a workday, he began to strangle her as he did Hana, but this time was nowhere near as careful. He was spotted by Stevie Unnerve, a middle-aged father who was in charge of neighborhood watch. Stevie began to confront Hedo after seeing Laura struggle. In a panic, Hedo pulled out a knife he carried in his back pocket and began stabbing Stevie in the face and neck area. And then, near death, he went to Laura to finish the job with his knife. However, a neighbor who had heard the commotion had called the police and arrived while Hedo was still in the process of cutting off her hand with his knife. He was then arrested and confessed to everything while being interrogated, including the incident with Hana. It was reported that Hedo had killed a total of 8 people if we were to include the 5 people on the bus who died in the vehicle accident. Before he could face trial, Hedo had killed himself by hanging himself with his own shoelaces. Hedo would go down as the worst serial killer in Tehook, and because of him, several families had lost members. 18-year-old Samantha Ordena had this to say: